Peace. This is Journey Coaching with Ross. I'm Ross Davis L. This is a breakdown of Man and His Symbols by Carl G. Jung, Marie Louise von Franz, Joseph L. Henderson, Jolande Jacoby, and Amelia Jaffe. This is the last work by Jung before his death in June 1961. The final editing of this complete work was done by Dr. von Franz. This is an attempt to present his work in psychology to the public. It is an examination of the world of the unconscious to the conscious self. Jung felt that self-understanding would lead to a full productive life and was convinced dreams offer practical advice. You should gain insight about yourself after getting this information. Intro by John Freeman, The Average Person. Jung is known as the father of modern psychology. He gave us concepts such as extrovert, introvert, and archetypes. Symbols are the language of the subconscious and are expressed via dreams. This is about our relation to our own unconscious. In direct terms, this is a study of human beings and their spiritual journey. To Jung, the subconscious is a friend. There are two main points to take from this book. That dreams are important and they are a personal expression of the individual's unconscious and is as real as any part of other life. Dream interpretation is unique to the individual. The symbols from the unconscious are of the highest importance, since the unconscious is at least half of our total being and often guides us. Those who limit themselves to conscious life and reject the symbols of the unconscious are bound to the laws of the conscious life. Approaching the Unconscious by Carl Jung. The importance of dreams. We use spoken and written words to express the meaning of what we want to convey to others. Our language is full of symbols, but also use signs and images that are not strictly descriptive, such as abbreviations, trademarks, patent medicine, badges, or insignia. A symbol is a term, a name, or picture that may be familiar in daily life, yet possesses specific connotations in addition to its conventional and obvious meaning. It implies something hidden, vague, or unknown. As we observe a symbol, we come to many ideas of its meaning. Due to this, symbolic terms represent concepts we cannot define. One reason religions employs symbolic language and images. We produce our own symbols unconsciously and spontaneously in the form of dreams. We never perceive anything fully or comprehend completely. We can see, hear, touch, and taste, but that depends on the number and quality of our senses, which limits our perception of the world around us. We can compensate by using scientific instruments. There are unconscious aspects of our perception of reality. First, when we sense something with our senses, it is translated into the mind where it becomes a psychic event, which is unknowable. Second, certain events have not consciously taken note. We become aware of it in a moment of intuition or while in deep thought that leads to a realization that something happened. It may appear in form of a dream. General rule, the unconscious aspect of any event is revealed in dreams, where it appears not as a symbol, where it appears as a symbolic image. The study of dreams has enabled psychologists to investigate the unconscious. Due to this, some argue that there are two subjects or two personalities within one individual. which is a symptom of a general unconsciousness common to all. We have developed consciousness slowly by working to become civilized. This work is far from over. There are many aspects of the human mind that are unknown. The psyche is not equal to our consciousness and its contents. Our psyche is a part of nature, and we cannot define it. Only state our beliefs and describe it as best we know how. Anthropologists have noted one of the most common mental derangements of primitive people is called the loss of soul, meaning a noticeable disruption of consciousness. More technically, a disassociation. We can become disassociated and lose our identity. We can be caught up by moods or become unreasonable and unable to recall important facts about ourselves or others. Self-control is a rare virtue. Being able to isolate part of our mind enables us to concentrate upon one thing at a time, and there is a difference between conscious decision to temporarily suppress a part of our own psyche and a condition which happens spontaneously. The former is a civilized achievement. The later is a loss of soul and a cause of a neurosis.
Sliced chicken breast, crisp cucumber, crumbled
An
feta.
ability to control one's emotions is desirable from one point, but is questionable when it deprives society of social interaction and the variety of colors and warmth. Dreams are the best place to learn about our symbol creating abilities. Sigmund Freud Sigmund Freud was the first who tried to explore empirically the unconscious and worked on the general assumption that dreams are associated with conscious thoughts and problems. He based his work on the work of Pierre Janet, who said neurotic symptoms are related to some conscious experience. They seem to be split off areas of the conscious mind, which can become conscious at another time and under different conditions. Freud and Joseph Breuer recognized that neurotic symptoms are symbolically meaningful. They are one way that the unconscious mind can become conscious. Dream symbols have more variety than physical symptoms of neurosis and often are elaborate and picturesque fantasies. Freud's technique of free association encouraged the dreamer to talk about his dream, and the thoughts prompted in his mind will reveal the unconscious background of his ailments and what he says and what he deliberately omits. After a time, it becomes easy to see what is being avoided and suppressed. Jung began to feel that free association was misleading and inadequate. A complex is repressed emotional things that can cause psychological disturbances or are symptoms of a neurosis. Dreams have significance, even if they come from an emotional upset, which habitual complexes are involved. Habitual complexes are tender spots of the psyche, which react most quickly to external stimulus or disturbances. Often, dreams have definite, purposeful structure, indicating an underlying idea or intention. As a rule, it is not immediately understood. Jung chose to concentrate on the dream, believing the dream expressed something specific. A story told by the conscious mind has a beginning, middle, and end, but this is not true for the dream. Its dimensions in time and space are different. To understand it, you must examine it from every aspect. To know and understand the psychic life process of an individual's whole personality, it is important to realize that dreams and their symbolic images have an important role. Only the material that is clearly visible part of the dream should be used in interpreting it. The dream has its own limitations. Its specific form tells us what belongs to it and what leads away from it. Psychologists demonstrated by reason of our glandular structures that there are male and female elements in all of us. Female elements in men is called the animate. It is a certain inferior kind of relatedness to the surroundings, and particularly to women, that is kept concealed from others and from oneself. Consciousness naturally resists anything unconscious and unknown, which makes it easier to understand why dreamers tend to ignore and deny messages of their dreams. Psychology is a young science because it attempts to deal with the workings of the unconscious, and it has experienced its share of resistance. Past and future in the unconscious. There are two fundamental points in dealing with dreams. First, the dream should be treated as fact, which one must make no previous assumption except that it somehow makes sense. Second, the dream is a specific expression of the unconscious. When something slips out of consciousness, it does not cease to exist. Part of the unconscious consists of many temporarily obscured thoughts, impressions, and images that continue to influence our conscious minds. Neurotic issues are not produced exclusively of disease and can be an exaggeration of normal occurrences. The exaggeration makes it more obvious than the average person. Forgetting is a normal process which conscious ideas lose energy because our attention is elsewhere. This is unavoidable because consciousness can keep a few images in full clarity at one time, and that clarity varies. The forgotten ideals still exist, although they cannot be recalled at will. They are present in a subliminal state and can rise again. Freud described many cases of forgetting as being due to disagreeable memories. Psychologists call these repressed contents. We must learn to choose between intentional and unintentional contents of the mind. The former is derived from the ego personality, the later comes from a source other than the ego, but is its other side. Subliminal material can consist of all urges, impulses, and intentions, all perceptions and intuitions, all rational or irrational thoughts, conclusions, inductions, deductions, and premises, and all feelings. Any or all can take form of partial, temporary, or constant unconscious unconsciousness because they are uninteresting, irrelevant, or we wish to push them out of sight. Jung discovered the unconscious is more than storage for memories, but has futuristic situations and ideas, which led to a new approach to psychology. The function of dreams. Dreams are difficult to understand. Images of a dream seem contradictory. Seem contradictory to the normal sense of time, and the normal sense of time is lost. And commonplace things can take different aspects. They do not make sense in terms of waking life, and we are tended to disregard them or confess that we do not understand. Anything we heard or experienced can become subliminal. Even what we retain in our conscious minds and recall at will can have unconscious undertones. Our conscious impressions assume elements of unconscious meaning that is physically significant, though we are not consciously aware of the subliminal meaning or in the way it extends and confuses the conventional meaning. Each of us receive abstract notions in the context of our mind and understand and apply it in a personal way due to the different social, political, religious, or psychological experience. If concepts are identical with words, the differences disappear. But since there are nuances that exist in our language, shows that the most matter-of-fact contents of the consciousness have uncertainty in them. Every concept in our conscious mind has its own psychic association. They are the invisible roots of our conscious thoughts. The images produced in dreams are more vivid than in waking life and can express unconscious meaning. In our daily experience, we need to state things as accurately as possible. We learn to discard fantasy in our language and thoughts, and to lose equality that's characteristic of the primitive mind. What psychologists call the psychic identity or mystical participation has been stripped off of our world of things. Obsession has been interpreted differently. Dreams have many images and associations of the same to primitive ideas, myths, and rites, which Freud called archaic remnants, suggesting psychic elements surviving in the human mind from ages past. Jung found these associations to be important, and these appeal directly to our feeling and emotion, which is linked between consciousness and unconsciousness. Dream language is symbolic and has psychic energy, and we must acknowledge it. In conscious life, we're exposed to influences other people stimulate or depress us, which leads us into following ways that are unsuitable for us. We may not be aware, but our consciousness has been disturbed. Generally, dreams restore our psychological balance by producing dreams material that reestablishes psychic equilibrium. This explains why people are delusional in themselves and their abilities. The dreams compensate for their deficiencies of their personality and at the same time warns them of danger of their present course. If warnings are disregarded, real accidents may happen. Dreams sometimes prove to be traps. They originate in spirit, and if we want to characterize spirit, we turn to the ancient mythology, fable, and fables. Then in the consciousness of modern man. The reason to compare modern and primitive man is partly to show the balance of those losses and gains. Primitive man was governed more from instincts than modern man. In the civilizing process, we divided our consciousness from the instinctive part of the psyche. These instinctive phenomena play a vital part in the compensating function of dreams. For the sake of mental stability and psychological health, the unconscious and conscious must be in harmony. If they are split, psychological disturbances follow. There is a warning against incompetent dream analysis. Some people's mental condition is so imbalanced that the interpretation of the dream can be extremely risky. There is no cookie cutter dream guide interpretation. No dream symbol can be separated from the one dreaming it, and no definite and straightforward interpretation of any dream. Each individual unconscious complements the compensates that person's conscious mind. Single symbols or motifs often occur. Examples are falling, flying, being persecuted by dangerous animals or hostile men, inappropriate dress in public, etc. Motifs must be considered in the context of dreams itself and not as a self-explanatory cipher. A reoccurring dream is a noteworthy phenomenon. The rediscovery of the principles of alchemy are an important part of work of psychology. The analysis of dreams, the difference between a sign and a symbol is a sign is always less than the concept it represents. A symbol always stands for something more than obvious and immediate meaning. Symbols are natural and spontaneous products, and therefore the main source of knowledge about symbolism. Symbols appear in all kinds of psychic manifestations. They are symbolic thoughts and feelings, acts, and situations. Inanimate objects can be a part of symbols. Many symbols are collective in their nature and origin, chiefly religious images, are collective representations emanating from primeval dreams and creative fantasies. You're encouraged to learn as much as you can about symbolism, and then forget it when you are analyzing a dream. It is of great therapeutic importance for an analyst to get the message of a dream as accurately as possible. An important thing about dream analysis is its rules are based on a dialectical exchange between two people. If it is not handled as such, the therapeutic benefits are lost and it becomes about who will dominate the other. Before constructing general theories about man and his psyche, we should learn more about the real human we have to deal with. The individual is the only reality. So much depends on his mental and moral quality, but if we are to see things in perspective, we need to understand the past of man as well as present. Hence, the reason for understanding myths and symbolism is essential. The problem of types. Psychology demonstrates the living relationship between two individuals. Neither can be separated from their subjective personality nor depersonalized. The analyst and the patient start by agreeing to deal with a chosen problem in an impersonal and objective manner. And once engaged, their whole personalities are involved in the discussion. Further progress is only possible if mutual agreement is reached. An objective judgment of the results is attained by comparing our conclusion with the generally accepted social norms which the individual belongs and the mental sanity of the person concerned. Results can level him out completely. In a sane society, people disagree because general agreement is rare outside instinctive human qualities. Disagreement is a vehicle of life, but not the goal. Agreement is equally important. Psychology depends on the balance of these. Dreams demand individual treatment with some generalities to classify and clarify the material. A psychologist collects by studying many individuals. Deeper analysis leads to confrontation, and it makes a difference whether their types of attitudes are the same. If they are the same, they can move unhindered for a long time. But if different standpoints, they may clash. Feeling versus thinking. Feeling refers to a judgment of value. By this, feeling is not an emotion. It is a rational function, whereas intuition is irrational. Thought is the applied use of intellectual faculty to adapt to people and circumstances. There are four functional ways our consciousness is oriented by experience. Sensation says something exists, thinking says what it is, feeling says if it is agreeable, and intuition says where it comes from, comes and goes. These are only four viewpoints, but many others exist. They are not dogmatic and are useful in understanding one's prejudices. The analyst expects the patient's willingness to listen to his interpretation of the patient, and the patient is given the same right. Do not try to project to fill in gaps of another's dream. Just as we can repress, disregard, and overlook our negative shadow qualities, we can do the same for our good ones as well. Why can't the dream be open and direct about its meaning? Freud assumed the existence of a censor that protected the dreamer of the shock of disagreeable memories. The subconscious retains ideas and images at a lower level of tension than in consciousness. The form dreams take is natural to the unconscious because that is the way they are retained in the subconscious. Dreams do not guard from what Freud called the incompatible wish, which is the disguise that shapes all impulses taken the unconscious. The dream cannot produce a definite thought, or it ceases to be a dream because it becomes a conscious act. Hence why dreams tend to skip important points the conscious mind is concerned with. Dream symbols are manifestations of the psyche beyond the conscious mind. The influence can be positive or negative depending on the individual. If too many things that ought to be conscious are unconscious, then its function will be twisted and prejudiced, and it's reasonable for a psychoanalyst concerned with the causes of a mental disturbance to begin by eliciting from the patient a voluntary confession and realization of everything the patient dislikes or fears. There is no therapeutic technique or doctrine. This is for general application. The archetype in dream symbolism. Many dreams are interpreted with the help of the dreamer, who gives association to and context of the dream image, which is looked at from all aspects. This works on the average case, but when it is an obsessive dreaming or a very emotional association produced by dreamer, it is not good for interpretation. For those cases, consider the elements that occur in the dream that are not rooted in the dreamer's personal life. These are what Freud called archaic gremlins, referring to the biological, prehistoric, and unconscious development of the mind in archaic man. The old psyche forms the basis of our mind. Jung calls archaic remnants archetypes. Archetypes have tendencies to form representations of a motif that can vary in detail without losing their basic pattern. If archetypes are rooted in the consciousness, then we should understand them. Instincts versus archetypes. Instincts are psychological urges perceived by the senses that also manifest in fantasies and reveal itself symbolically. The manifestation is the archetype. If you identify the psyche with consciousness, you can fall into the idea that man comes into the world with an empty psyche and contains the sum of what he learned. It is believable that the early origins of man's capacity to reflect from the consequences of violent emotional clash. The shock of similar emotional experience often is needed to wake people up. Such can prove that an archetype has been working in the unconscious for a while, arranging the circumstances that lead to crisis. Archetypical forms are changing patterns. In these cases, wait till the dream and its meaning are understood or until the external event occurs that explains the dream. It has been thought that dreams can predict the future. The unconscious seems to be informed and comes to its own conclusions that is expressed in the dream. The unconscious seems to examine and draw conclusions from facts like consciousness, but done automatically. Archetypes have their own initiatives and specific energy. These powers enables them to produce a meaningful interpretation and to interfere in any situation with their own impulses and thought formations. They function like complexes. As, as personal complexes produce personal bias, archetypes create myths, religions, and philosophies that influence and characterize nations and epochs of history. The universal hero myth always refers to a powerful man or god man who vanquishes evil in the form of dragons, serpents, monsters, demons, etc., and liberates his people from destruction and death. Invent is derived from the Latin invernare, meaning to find, hence to find something by seeking it. It later alludes to knowing what you are going to find. The further you go into the origins of the collective image, the more we uncover archetypical patterns that were not reflected upon. Deeds are not invented, they are done. We are first moved to deeds by the unconscious factors, which are only understood through reflection on the causes. The inner motives come from a source separate from our consciousness. In earlier times, this force was called mana, spirit, demons, and gods. We are dependent upon powers beyond our control. We were given a certain amount of willpower that we can use as we please, but lack introspection. Our controlling powers keep us busy with restlessness, vague apprehensions, psychological complications, drugs, alcohol, food, and a plethora of neuroses. The soul of man. We believe we are the master of our soul, but if we are unable to control our moods and emotions or become aware of the unconscious factors that we experience, we are not. We protect ourselves against seeing our own split state by a form of by a system of psychological compartments. Modern society is disassociated like a neurotic. We fail to see our vices and cover them with good manners, which are thrown back in our faces. Western society has found difficulty in correcting the moral issues of today. We fail to realize the need to recognize our shadow. Communism represents the archetypical pattern of a golden age paradise where everything is provided in abundance for everyone and a great and just and wise chief rules. Our life consists of opposites. When things are good, things go smoothly. But when things are bad, we are suffering and we turn to God for meaning. People feel that it makes a difference if they have a positive belief in a meaningful way of life or in God and immorality. Why deprive us of views that would prove helpful in crisis and would give meaning to our existence? How do we know such ideas are true? We are free to choose which point of view to take, and it is arbitrary decision. It is the role of religious symbols to give meaning to life. A wider sense of meaning to symbols is what raises man beyond spending and getting. The dream is normal and natural and does not mean something is not. Confusion comes from dream contents that are symbolic and have multiple meanings. The conscious mind cannot fully comprehend in a logical form. Therefore, it is tough to understand life because it produces emotions and symbolic ideas. In theory, we dismiss emotions and be unconscious, but not in practice. Childish fantasies often continue into adult life. Many dreams are sexual illusions. The interpretation of dreams and symbols demands intelligence. Also, an increasing knowledge of dreamers' individuality and an increasing self-awareness of the interpreter. When we attempt to understand symbols, we encounter the symbol and the wholeness of the symbol producing individual. Imagination and intuition are vital in the higher grades of science. They replace rational intellect and it is in its application to a problem. Intuition can often ensure that dreams are readily understood by dreamers. This can be dangerous though. You can explain and know if you reduce intuition to a knowledge of fact and logical connections. The role of symbols. Natural symbols differ from cultural symbols in being derived from the unconscious mind and represent a plethora of variations of essential archetypical images. Cultural symbols are used to express eternal truths and are used in many religions. They can change over time but retain their essence. The psychic charge behind them, their functions like prejudices. Cultural symbols are important parts of our mental makeup and vital in building human society, and we can it cannot be destroyed without serious consequence. When they are repressed or neglected, the energy enters the unconscious and serves to revive and intensify whatever is uppermost in the unconscious tendencies. Our rationalism has put us at the mercy of the psychic world. By freeing ourselves from superstition, we lost our spiritual values to a dangerous degree. Anthropologists described what happened to primitive societies when its spiritual values are exposed to modern civilization, as the people losing the meaning of their lives, their social organization disintegrates, and they morally decay. Faith does not exclude thought. Two archetypical principles are at the foundation of contrasting ideas of East and West. They are spirit, the father, the male, and matter, mother, feminine. As scientific understanding grows, the world became dehumanized. We feel isolated in the universe because we are no longer involved in nature and lost our emotional, like unconscious identity with the natural phenomenon, which leads to a loss of emotional energy that this symbolic connection supplied. To explain symbols and meaning, it is vital to know if representations are related to personal experience or from general conscious knowledge. Archetypes present in waking life as images and emotions simultaneously. An image charged with emotion, it must be explained in a manner indicated by the whole life situation of the individual that it relates. Knowing the names of archetypes is useless unless you know how it relates to self. The symbol producing function of our dream is an attempt to bring the original mind of man into consciousness, where it can be subjected to critical self reflection. These images are so charged that they are uncomfortable and can cause real fear. The more repressed, the deeper the neurosis. The main task of dreams is to bring back the memory of the old childish world. Such has a remarkable healing effect in some cases, which Freud called this the infantile amnesia gap, which is the positive loss and recovery of, of, of memories and can bring positive increase in the life and well-being. Because a child is physically small and his conscious thoughts are scarce and simple, we do not realize the complications of the infantile mind that are based on the original identity of the old psyche. When a person integrates into their conscious mind contents of the unconscious, their personality changes. This is called the individualization process. It is true that archetypes are exchangeable, but the spiritual aspect remains a fact and represents the value of the archetypical event. It's easy to lose value because thinking and feeling are opposites. Healing the split. Our intellect has created a new world that dominates nature. In spite of our domination of nature, we are still slaves to nature until we learn to control our own nature. Change must begin with the individual who will experience it and carry it through. No one can afford to wait for somebody to do what he must do for himself. God speaks chiefly through dreams and visions. The Buddhists discard unconscious fantasies as illusions. Christians put the church and Bible between them and the unconscious. And rational intellect does not know that its consciousness is not the total psyche. Our knowledge of the unconscious shows it is natural and neutral. It contains all aspects of human nature.